I was just thinking about how badly Reach was torn up by the Covenant, and I wondered who the hell could have survived that whole event, the glassing, the destruction of this planet. And yes, I think of Halo in my downtime, even though I spent hours upon hours every single day making these videos. So we know the Spartans in June survived, but what about the civilians? Where did they go? What happened to them? What about other military personnel? Could have other people survived Reach's event, Reach's glassing, while still on the planet and survived until the Covenant was defeated? How and when could that even been possible, and could they have been rescued? Today we're going to talk about all that about Reach's survivability, how it's possible, and how Reach would one day, already confirmed in the lore, return to its former glory. Reach was a military planet. It arguably, besides Morley, was the most significant planet in the UNSC forces, and before invasion, Oni had already predicted at the rate that the Covenant was ravaging colonies before Reach throughout the galaxy that they would find the planet soon, and they were right. With that being said, I wonder if Oni prepared a little bit, or at least their very high executives decided to leave the planet before it was invaded. Reach was a very important place because it was humanity's lifeline. It was the UNSC's factory on building warships that would fend off the Covenant, basically because the planet had tons and tons of massive mines of titanium, and this comes into play soon. 2 days before the invasion, the Covenant sent a strike team to disable the communications array, leaving Reach without the ability to communicate with the rest of the UNSC, in which Noble Team came to assist, believing that it was a local insurrectionist group, but as iconically said, insurrectionists don't leave plasma burns. But despite the Covenant landing more ground forces and begin glassing targeted areas, most of the planet's population was still clueless the invasion was occurring, which honestly I think is why so many people would die in the coming month or two. But the cat was out of the bag when the battle broke out in New Alexandria. There was no cover-ups, no hoaxes there, with millions of civilians trying to get the hell off the planet, with large numbers of evacuation transports being shot down by Coveys in the meantime. The city was hopelessly under siege, especially with the glassing beginning. About 20 years before the fall of Reach would begin, Reach's population was confirmed to be around 703 million lives, including both civilian and military. Well, the Covenant killed about 700 million of those people. But here's the kicker, man. Even though the Covenant killed more than 99% of the people on this planet, they still had to pull their punches because the Covenant also highly desired the titanium underneath the planet's surface down in the mines, and they were afraid of damaging this precious titanium that they could use, so they would take it easy. And yeah, this is what taking it easy looks like for the Covenant. In about a month, the Covenant had torched a fruitful, powerful planet into just a scorched wasteland, right? With 700 million something people dead, civilians and military alike, with probably about 100 warships down too. And they all died in a lot of different ways actually, such as being shot down and crashing, being glassed, or straight up being killed by energy swords or plasma. It doesn't matter if they're military, a Spartan, or civilians. I mean, the Covenant had all kinds of ways of murdering innocent lives. So not everyone obviously had a ship to slip space travel. It's kind of like similar to having a boat nowadays, you know, not everyone has a boat, and a boat's the only way to get the hell off this planet in this scenario that I'm trying to make an easy comparison to. So obviously, like in the campaign, we had to help civilians get on these group transports so they could get off the planet. But what's mind-boggling to think about is not the people that died during this invasion, not the people that were shot down, not the civilians or military, but the people that survived the glassing of the planet. And it's actually not that unlikely. When you see glassing, you see the tremendous effect that it has on the ecosystem, on the planet, on the battlefield. It's easy to think that literally every living thing near it has died, but not necessarily. And this right here, this is what Reach looked like after it was being glassed, alright? And it's really, really bad. I mean, the planet's essentially on fire. It looks like a sun, and it is fucking toast. But you know what? Underneath the ground, in bunkers, it's actually possible to live, and I got some proof here. Alright, referencing Halo First Strike, Dr. Halsey was actually stuck on the planet along with Admiral Whitcomb, Spartan Anton 044, Grace 093, Lee 008, along with Kelly, Fred, and Will. Now, yes, most of these people are Spartans, alright, maybe they can, handle with all these heat temperature changes and whatnot, but Dr. Halsey and Whitcomb, I mean, they were without suits, right? So they were underneath the caves, and this is described in Halo First Strike, actually. So they actually survived in the caves up to 2 weeks after the planet looked something like this. Alright, although despite how badly the planet was toasted, the Covenant forces, including groups of soldiers, were in the caves, hunting down, for example, people like survivors like Dr. Halsey and the Spartans. Honestly though, these caves would probably be a scary place to be, as the Covenant were very careful during their invasion, like I described earlier, not to destroy Reach's precious titanium deposits underground that they could use for weapons and warships. And post-invasion, the Covenant was likely beginning to excavate this element so that they could begin building warships, begin fixing things, and so on. Also consider this scene from Reach as an example, alright? They're in a cave, they're kind of avoiding the glassing, the big dust storms coming, right? And under a sword base as well, in a cavern, although this place is destroyed shortly after. It just shows you that, it's kind of possible to avoid the Covenant to an extent, even though we fight the Covenant right there. But anyway, some of these structures were mined, right, and excavated by the UNSC. There was lots of titanium deposits, which obviously that means that there's going to be a lot of mines. There's going to be a lot of tunnels, and certainly the Covenant can't cover all those, alright? Undoubtedly, also there's natural formations, caves that have no titanium deposits that make it possible to survive in if there's enough food and resources. And out of the 3 million survivors or so, most of these people probably escaped the planet, obviously. I don't think there was 3 million people gathered up in the caves. Obviously, people got off the planet. But the few that didn't, and we're probably talking less than 1,000. Now, this isn't necessarily confirmed in Halo lore, but I think it's damn near likely, just considering everything that we've seen so far. Most of these survivors would be likely UNSC operatives, commanders, and others that maybe knew of the caves or tunnels, that maybe worked in the mines, that knew that it was a place that they could bring their family if the transport thing didn't work out, and if they made it in time before the glassing, affected them and killed them. The reason why I think that most of the survivors were UNSC is because civilians probably just didn't have the resources, the time, the knowledge of these mines and caves, or where to be, when to be, and plus just the survivability of it is just so slim. It makes it very hard unless the people had doomsday bunkers, or that they had some secret resources hidden away already. But doomsday bunkers probably aren't completely unlikely either, considering that the Covenant was going planet to planet murdering billions. Reach was probably going to be, toast eventually, right? And I think people kind of knew that potentially. They were kind of out there in space, so yeah, they could die. And I don't think doomsday bunkers are completely out of the question. Obviously, Reach had defenses, civilian manufactured protocols in the cities, like we see where Kat dies. They were going to a bunker that would protect them from the glassing that civilians were supposed to go to. So yeah, obviously there were doomsday bunkers all over this planet, but did they make it through? Did they survive the glassings? Did the Covenant just break them open and kill them? Who knows how that all happened. Ultimately, these survivors would need to find enough food and resources for about 6 more months, probably kind of safe to be exposed, at least, request help, via radio, and send out distress signals, as the Covenant would fall about 6 months after the invasion of Reach officially. Although I think this planet would still be unsafe generally, besides like the ecosystem being fucked, for about 14 months after Reach, because likely, there's just going to be Covenant remnants. But what's interesting about 14 months after the fall of Reach was that UNSC and humanity revisited the planet in drones, alright? They began to colonize and re-terraform the planet, in which at this time, any Covenant remnants would either flee from the, overwhelming forces of the UNSC that getting back on its feet, or be killed off. As far as the millions of civilians that successfully got on evacuation ships, now they just had to worry about not being shot down and being protected by the UNSC forces that were spread out, spread very thin as well. It's very likely that the evacuation transports would be escorted by the escaping UNSC forces that would be regrouping at the Epsilon system. Over 15 Spartan 2s and an estimate of about 10 to 25 Spartan 3s died on Reach, including most of Noble Team. Some people suggest that Noble 6 survived at the end of Reach based off the fact that he wasn't actually ever seen dying, and I haven't really ever talked about this, but the theory is that he survived off food and water and other scraps left by Oni and UNSC forces. But not only is it practically confirmed he's dead and his helmet is put in the dirt, but it would also ruin like the whole theme of sacrifice that Reach was about. But we do have one survivor of Noble Team, and that would be June, which went off to basically be a cheerleader for Oni in the Spartan 4 program, and eventually recruit Edward Buck, which would eventually play a part in Fireteam Osiris. In Halo Bad Blood, June was last seen imprisoned by a rogue AI working for Cortana on an Oni base. This is post Halo 5, when the Created has basically taken over everything. So after the fall of Reach, when all the shenanigans were done with, and by shenanigans I mean the mass genocide of the human race on planet Reach, in November 2553, that's about 13-14 months after the planet was completely glassed and considered destroyed, right? A pioneer group arrived on Reach to prepare to re-terraform the planet, believe it or not only for symbolic meaning of humanity rebuilding after the 30-year-long war or so, but also Reach was a great strategic planet as well. The UNSC quickly started a classified revival plan and kept secret under strict Oni classification, which was complicated due to the unaffiliated local civilians, contractors, and unlicensed Kigyar Savagers, which I guess humanity was pretty okay with at the time. As up to 120,000 people, believe it or not, at this time now, were living on Reach. Crazy mofos. I mean, it is kind of crazy to believe that anyone would want to live here. But yes, I think most of the people that moved here post-war, I think wanted to just come back here for ancestral reasons, or potentially just to get away because it's cheap, or runaways for work and construction and jobs and so on. But certainly not a place to raise a family. Again, you know, it's been 14 months since the entire planet was essentially destroyed. But it could also be a really great place for salvaging, now that I think about it, because there's just tons of destroyed warships, Covenant and UNSC alike, entire facilities just, you know, not reclaimed yet, at least by the military, and you know, the military's there trying to figure everything out. So, but there was actually Spartans coming back to the planet as well. Around this time, with experience and a background of combat engineering, some Spartans were asked to report to Oni for screening and assessment for a mission on reviving the planet. It was also rumored that Oni intended to dispatch Spartan force to search for Castle Base under Metachite Mountain for an object yet to be disclosed. So we don't know what that is, but it's likely something foreigner related. And of course, by 2589, about 37 years after the final glassing here on Reach, as seen at the end of the game, Reach would be restored to a habitable state. It looks like, I mean, there's green lush fields, this beautiful mountain, the sky looks normal again. So yeah, I mean, it was pretty devastating, but it looks like at this time that the planet's back on track. And in the background, we even see new human colonists starting to resettle the planet, and I'm sure around this time, once the planet fully gets back on its feet and there's real, you know, settlements happening, cities beginning to really pop up all around the planet, then that's when people, I think, would really come and recognize this planet as a fully functioning society and planet with a habitable atmosphere, right? And what's interesting about this is about 2 decades after this was re-terraformed, 2 decades after this last shot here, by 2610, at least 2 cities, New Alexandria and Estergom, were reconstructed. Although the project was to re-terraform the planet was a very lengthy one, being around 57 years long for it to kind of get back on its feet, it looks like around that time the planet was on its way to really coming back to its you know, former self, the Reach that we remember before it was destroyed to hell. But just revisiting this shot here at the end of Reach, along with Dr. Halsey's voice, which was recorded at an unknown time, it's incredibly humbling to see that, well, despite Reach being destroyed and glassed, someday it does come back, and that's confirmed in Halo lore, and that's just nice to think about. Thank you so much for watching this video. I really do appreciate your time, and if you enjoyed, then be sure to hit that subscribe button and hit that notifications bell, because subscriptions don't show up on YouTube Home anymore. And if you want to see more videos like this, then hit that like button. Guys, I will see you in the next one soon. Later.